So I'm Shanti, everyone. Welcome to today's BK Chit Chat. Thank you very much to those of you that are here live, and also warm greetings to those of you joining later on through the video. I'm speaking to you all on Easter Saturday, and we'd had a request a few weeks ago actually to talk a little bit more on the Christ soul, to have a think about what Baba tells us about that soul. Is a soul that's very precious to many BKs because many BKs have done bhakti in this birth in the Christian religion. And even if you haven't, is a precious soul maybe for previous births bhakti, and also a soul that Baba mentions fairly regularly in the Murli. So today it's a slightly different format, although Ranjan Ben is sitting next to me, so she is in the room. She's not on the screen because I'm going to read to you on the screen some of the points from the Murli, and then we can think about it and discuss it. Now, if you haven't come across this before, this is the Brahma Kumari's Murli search engine. So you can see that the web address is murlisearch.brahmakumaris.org. And it's basically an online library of the Murlis. It's quite useful if you want to just put in a search word. So I put in the word Christ, and it allows you to look at, and initially we're going to look at the Sakar Murlis, which are the Murlis when Brahma Baba was around, and then we'll have a look at the Avyakt Murlis after that. And you can, in this way, have a look at different things like that. So you've got different search options there. Now, we're just going to read some of the extracts and then think about what that says. So this first one, now these dates, they might not be like original dates. Sometimes the dates that's uploaded is like the last time it was read in the class rather than the actual date of the Murli. So that's something to be aware of. And in this extract, Baba's talking about creation. So the father sits here and explains how the world is created. You children understand that the human world can never be created without the mother and father. It cannot be said that the world is created through the father. No, it is said you are the mother and father. This mother and father creates the new world and makes the children worthy of it. You'll remember we had quite a few Murlis on that 2-3 weeks ago on Shiv Baba and Brahma. So this deity religion also needs a mother and father. Shiv Baba always says he's just the father, he's not the mother. And this body of the soul who's in the body that he enters, that's actually the mother soul. It's not a random body. But this soul of Brahma, even though it's a male body, the soul is actually the mother of the deity religion. This is his great speciality. It is not that the deities come here from up above, excuse me, to establish their religion in the way that Christ established the Christian religion. So Baba begins to give us this insight that Christ is a soul that's come from up above to establish his religion. Christians also call Christ their father. If there is a father, so Baba is saying that this is a principle that applies through all the different religions. If there is a father, surely a mother is also needed. They say that Mary is the mother, but who was Mary? The new soul of Christ came and entered another's body. And so Christians were created through the mouth of that one he entered. So Baba is explaining to us that there is this difference between Christ and Jesus. And Jesus, the man, the boy, and then the man, is the person who's the body, the person who's been there as a human. But that soul of Jesus, that is the mother of the religion. But that soul has not come just then from the soul. That soul's been here a little bit longer and has their own body. So they have been brought up. So Jesus is that Jewish person that we hear about. And you have to have this combination of the two, the father and the mother. So they have a special connection, a special relationship. For some centuries, actually, the church did struggle. The early Christians did talk about this human Christ and this divine Christ. So you do get this sort of narrative within Christianity, but it does become confusing. So they just then settle for the one divine. And then later on, they move to thinking of just Christ as God. But there's been lots of divisions about the opinions on that over the centuries. And Baba is confirming that there are those two parts, the human and also the divine soul that incarnates. Then Baba is going on to talk about yesterday's memorial day of the crucifixion. It has also been explained that the soul had not performed any such action that he would have to experience sorrow. So Baba is distinguishing between the divine Christ soul and the human Jesus. It is a pure soul that comes. The Supreme Father, so in the same way, the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul cannot experience any sorrow. It is this corporeal one, Brahma, who experiences sorrow and is insulting. Therefore, when Christ was crucified on a cross, it was the one whose body the Christ soul entered who had to endure that suffering. The pure soul of Christ would not have had to endure the pain. Christ was the Father, and so where could the mother have come from? They made Mary the mother. They have shown that the Virgin Mary gave birth to Christ. But all of that was taken from the scriptures. So there's borrowing of concepts between the different religions. And one of the characters in the Mahabharata is Kunti, and she is also shown to have been giving this virgin birth to this character called Karna, the child of the sun god. But this was a matter of divine vision, but they copied it. And then Baba's going on to talk about how Brahma is the mother. So similarly, this Brahma is the mother through whose mouth you children have been born. But then Mama has been made responsible for looking after everyone. So Baba is suggesting that the Mother Mary played that role for the early Christians, just like Mama played that role for the early Brahmins, of sustaining. And you need a practical mother as well. So there's one mother who is the mother that gives the mouth-born progeny. So it's like they took birth as Christians through the knowledge shared through the mouth of Jesus. So that makes Jesus the mother. But then for the practical sustenance, the Mother Mary looks like, and they would be like with Mama, there were the other daddies as well. So maybe women at that point had a very prominent role in the early church as well. And so Baba is saying that the same happens with Christ. Christ enters someone and establishes that religion. His followers would be called the mouth-born creation of Christ, brothers and sisters. Christ is the father of the Christians, and the one whose body he enters and creates children with is the mother. Then Mary was made responsible for looking after them. And so they have considered Mary to be the mother. Here, the Father says, I entered this one and create you children through his mouth. So this mama is also a child born through the mouth. These are matters to be understood in detail. So, an interesting insight in that extract. Does anyone who's here in the room want to make any comments or ask any questions on that first extract? No? I'll push on and then you can always come in later. So let's move to the second one. And again, Baba in this extract is really talking about how, first of all, we can learn from the Christian devotees and how they remember Christ. And so Baba is saying you should also stay in solitude and remember Shiv Baba. And here Baba is talking about the soul of Christ and beginning to introduce to us that the soul of these religious fathers doesn't go back up to heaven, doesn't go up to the soul world. They believe that Christ is sitting in heaven and that they will go to heaven. They also believe that Christ has gone to heavenly God, the Father, and that they too will go to him by having remembrance of him. All Christians are children of that one. They have some correct knowledge because the Christ soul hasn't gone back home up above. The name Christ is of the body that was put on the cross. A soul cannot be put on the cross. It is wrong to say that the Christ soul went to God, the Father. How can anyone return home yet? Each founder of a religion definitely has to sustain his religion after establishing it. When a building is whitewashed, that too is sustenance. So Baba is explaining that there's a principle in the drama that after creation, there's sustenance. And so the Christ soul doesn't go back up above, but takes rebirth within the Christian religion. So initially he would have joined the early Christians and taken rebirth to one of them, and then kept things going. It was quite precarious for those early Christians. And then after a while, more and more Christian souls are coming from the soul world, so that religion grows in power. And when one thinks of people like the Emperor Constantine, I do wonder whether that's the soul of Christ, having taken rebirth and become a king. Christ is remembered as a king as well. And you see this, for example, in India, where the Emperor Ashoka, he became Buddhist, and he then spread Buddhism right across the Indian subcontinent and sent monks everywhere and converted so many people. And Buddhism really dominated India after that emperor became Buddhist. So the early Christians, they had thought that because Christ had said to them that destruction was going to happen in their lifetime and he would be back as well. And it didn't. So they began to think that maybe they've got to convert the emperor in Rome. So they kept this as because Rome was really the center of their world there. And so they kept this aim to convert the emperor in Rome. And then through his influence, they could spread Christianity. And they thought that then Christ would come back. So that happened in the 4th century because the emperor's mother became a Christian. So in this way, it could be these souls, these early Christian souls, they've taken rebirth later on, and they're in different bodies, playing different roles. And the soul of Christ is a very powerful soul. And so then when he has a powerful role as well and a powerful status, then he can do a lot with it. And then as that church is developed, of course, the church in Rome and the church in other places too becomes very powerful. So the soul of Christ and the early Christians, they would be taking rebirth to expand those churches as well, and the influence of that religion. So the soul of Christ is still here. And this is a unique insight that Baba gives us. Does anyone want to ask anything on that point? Okay. So this extract is emphasizing that point. So first of all, Baba says that you children know that Shiv Baba established through Brahma the original eternal deity religion, which lasted through the golden and silver ages for half the cycle. Then later, those of the other religions expanded. For instance, when Christ came, there were very few at first. Only when there are many of them can they rule. The Christian religion continues even now. It continues to grow. They know that they have become Christians through Christ. Christ came 2,000 years ago, and expansion is taking place now. Christians would say that they belong to Christ. First, Christ alone comes, and then his religion is established, and it then expands. From one, there are two, and from two, there are four, and expansion continues to take place in that way. And look how big the Christian tree has become. So you might remember a few days ago we had a Murli on this, that to understand the cycle, we have to understand the seed and the tree. This is right the way through this, how the cycle works. So the Christ soul is the seed of the Christian tree. And then you've got many billions of souls who are part of that tree, and they're sitting in the soul world. And each of them will then come down systematically, sequentially, according to the time. So 2 becomes 4, like this. It just continues to expand because each one has a different place in the tree. And then when you put all the religions together, you get the tree of all the religions. And Baba's saying the foundation is the deity dynasty. And so, like that concept of Adam and Eve existing in the past, that's what Baba goes on. And then later in that, Christ or Buddha to be their father. So this applies to all the religions also. And then well, not this festival, but Christmas is probably the most famous festival. And Baba talks about something which is mentioned also in Hinduism, that seems to be some parallels between Krishna and Christ. So I'll just read it from here. Neither does Krishna teach us, nor can the Father teach us through Krishna. Krishna is the Prince of Heaven. You children also have to explain this. Krishna is a child of his parents in the Golden Age. He is a child of a golden-aged father. He is the Prince of Paradise. No one knows him. On the birthday of Krishna, people make a swing for him in their own homes and in the temples. Others go to a temple and put money in the box there and carry out their worship. These days, Christ is portrayed in the same way as Krishna. He is crowned, etc., and put in his mother's lap, just as Krishna is portrayed. The names Krishna and Christ, because in Latin it's Christo, or Greek it's Christo, isn't it? So the names Krishna and Christ or Christo sound similar, but there is a lot of difference between the birth of Krishna and the birth of Christ. The birth of the Christ soul is not in the form of a baby. The Christ soul comes and enters someone else. He cannot be born through vice because of the timing of them. The Krishna soul comes in the golden age when there is virgin birth for everyone. But the Christ soul's role is in the night of the cycle. And in the copper and iron age, we don't have virgin births. So the religious fathers They can't come and be born through a womb because of that influence. So Baba is saying he cannot be born through vice. Previously, they never portrayed Christ as a young child. They always portrayed him on a cross. Now they show him in this way. You children know that no one who establishes a religion can be killed in that way. So again, it's going back to that point. So whom did they kill? The one whose body he entered received the pain. How could a Sato Pradhan soul receive pain? What karma could he have done to receive so much pain? Souls come in a Sato Pradhan state. Everyone's accounts have to be settled. The Father now makes everyone pure. Completely pure Sato Pradhan soul cannot come from there and experience pain. It is the soul that undergoes suffering. It is when a soul is in his body that he experiences pain and sorrow. So, in this way, what Baba is explaining is that there's been borrowing of different concepts. So, Krishna is shown as a teacher, but he doesn't teach anyone. Shiv Baba teaches, Christ teaches, Buddha teaches, but the Hindus wanted to compete, so they would show Krishna as a teacher. Similarly, I think it's only the Gospel of Matthew actually that depicts uh, the scene of the baby in the manger. I'm not sure even the other Gospels talk about that, but it's become popularized, the nativity scene. I myself was the angel Gabriel when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, and our school nativity. We used to sing hymns every Monday morning in assembly as well in my elementary school. So these scenes are very popular. From a young age, we learn about these scenes, but actually it's not mentioned that much in the Bible at all. And Baba is saying that there's borrowing going on. So this virgin birth, uh, Christ being a prince and a king, that type of depiction is really the soul of Krishna. But the soul of Christ has a different role to play in a different age. So this one, Baba is talking about the scripture and the role of the scripture. The Gita is the number one scripture. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Mother Gita, is the jewel of all the scriptures. Now, who gave birth to the mother? It is the father who adopts the mother. So who spoke the Gita? It would not be said that Christ adopted the Bible. The Bible that they study was created from the teachings spoken by Christ. And now who gave the teachings of the Gita? So Baba is making that parallel that scriptures are created afterwards, after someone has taught. So in that way, the Bible is born of Christ because it's some of his teachings, but a lot of it is actually his example, his stories. And so then Baba's speaking about that. So let me just see if there's anything to add. And then just that point about the Christian souls continuing to come. So the Supreme Father, the Supreme Soul, sends all the founders of religion to establish their own religions. So they come and establish their religions. It isn't that they give anyone an inheritance. No, there is no question of an inheritance there. It is only the one Father who gives you your inheritance. The Christ soul is not the Father of everyone, that he would give the inheritance. He is not even the Father of the Christians that he could give an inheritance, meaning that Shib Baba is the father of all souls, that in this context. The question arises, which inheritance would he give and to whom? He, the Christ soul, comes to establish a religion. All the other souls of the Christian religion continue to follow him down. There is no question of an inheritance, because the inheritance is to go back up to the soul world. But when the religious father comes down, actually everyone comes down after him. Excuse me, you have to receive your inheritance from the Father. For instance, Abraham, Buddha, Christ came. What did they do? Did they give an inheritance to anyone? No, it is the Father's duty to give the inheritance. He comes here himself. Souls continue to come down here and expansion continues to take place, whereas an inheritance is always received from the Creator. So Baba then contrasting the roles of Shiv Baba and the religious fathers. The religious fathers bring souls down from the soul world, and Shiv Baba is now going to take everyone back up, including the religious fathers. So those are some points. And when Daddy Janki used to read these Murlis, she used to talk about, yes, I was mentioning earlier about how I even uplift the sages. I just noticed it here in this extract that this is in the Gita as well. So Shiv Baba has come to uplift all of the religious fathers, all of the gurus, all of the priests. And so he is the one who takes everyone back into liberation at this time. When Lady Janki used to read these Murlis, she used to talk about the power, the different power of Christ and the different power of Jesus, and how the power of both of these souls still continues now. So as Baba's saying that it's the soul of Jesus who is on the cross, and this festival of Easter is really a memorial of that experience. And Christians feel that sorrow even now, because the soul of Jesus is their mother soul. So if your mother is going through something, you're going to feel upset, for sure. But Daddy Janki would say that the whole of that religion stands on this foundation of tolerance, of forgiveness. Think how powerful that soul of Jesus is. The soul of Christ is definitely very powerful. And as Baba's explaining, these religious fathers are in their karmatit stage. They don't have any karmic accounts. They just come fresh from the soul world. And look, even after 2,000 years, someone will go into a church now and experience vibrations. Because when you do something in the karmatit stage, the vibrations travel through the centuries. And so it's remarkable what the Father does. But even what this mother soul has done, out of all of the religions, I don't think the soul of Jesus I don't think any other mother of a religion has this severe experience like the soul of Jesus. So this mother soul is a unique mother. And yet, tolerance. And yet, that soul prays for the forgiveness of those who are performing this action. And yet, the soul does not complain, does not say anything. Now, Lady Janki used to say that power of that tolerance reverberates. So when you're planting a tree, so Christ and Jesus, these are the seeds of that Christian tree. And you look at that foundation of tolerance, you look at that foundation of forgiveness, you look at that foundation of love. And the good Christians now, they will still have those sanskars. because their mother has these samskar. So Daddy would teach us that think what Shiv Baba is asking for us. He's wanting the deity religion to last for half a cycle. So what sort of foundation must we have? We must have all the powers as well. Do we have such tolerance? If someone put you on a cross, would you forgive them? So we might not even forgive someone who doesn't talk to us properly. So what is our level of tolerance? What's our depth? We can learn a lot. Now I'm going to just switch over to the Avyak. So I haven't changed anything else, but we're now just looking at Murlis that are spoken through the body of Daddy Gulzar. And this first one is actually the one that Ranjan Bella has got handy there as well, in her book. So I might just hand over to her to just share. Hopefully you can all hear it. You're going to read from the 18th January 84? Is it that one? Yeah, that's from there. Yeah. Yeah, that one. Oh, okay, does it? Here it's got it as the 18th of January.
See, there are lots of questions in anybody's in 84.
Do you want to read it or shall I read it from here?
You read.
Okay. Okay. So I'll just expand this a little bit. Let me try and get it. Okay. Yeah. So as far as I know, there's a little background here to this question. So after the Murli, I think it was Sister Veronica from Florida who had asked Baba, because she is from a Catholic background, so she had asked about the Antichrist, which is shown in the Bible that to be a figure in white. So I think she asked Baba, are we the Antichrist? Because at the time of distraction, this Antichrist appears in white. And so Baba is taking this up. So I'm just going to read Baba's answer from that. So here it is, question. It is shown in the Bible. Excuse me, I have an allergy problem, so sorry for... Oh, no, thank you. No, there's nothing that can stop it. So, question. It is shown in the Bible that in the final moments, there will be the form of an Antichrist. What does this mean? And Baba's answer? Antichrist means reducing the impact of that religion. Nowadays, if you look at the Christian religion, the value of the Christian religion is considered to be less, meaning it's been diminished. Those of that religion do not consider themselves to be so powerful, and they experience greater power in others. Those are the ones who are anti-Christ. So now is a very controversial point between the Christian faiths. Generally, the Catholic faith and some other faiths, they require the doctrine of celibacy for priests, whereas Protestant faiths don't, and I think some others don't as well. So this is Baba's comment on this. Nowadays, many priests do not give that importance to celibacy, and they have begun to inspire the priests to become householders. So it is as though people of that religion have become anti-Christ. So that's a powerful comment. And Baba is talking to us about the concept of Christ living that celibate life, and Christ then also teaching others. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit because see if I can find the one. Do you want to just pass me the book? And no, just read from there. It'll be easier than the history. So there was a bit about the Christ soul that I wanted to just try and find. I can't see it. So let me just I think some of these are listed here as being Avyak Murlis, but they're not actually. They're Sakar Murli ones. Ah, yes. And again, I think this is actually from the Sakar Murli. And Baba talks about Christians speaking about Christ appearing back in a beggar form or in an ordinary form. And so Baba is saying here that this is why you are told that both the tasks of establishment and destruction are being carried out simultaneously. Now they will be carried out even faster. Just as there is always a queue of beggars in front of the great donors, in the same way there is going to be a queue in front of all of you. When you have a big crowd at an exhibition, what do you do at that time? You start a queue and give them a short message. You cannot give them the knowledge of creation, but you give them the introduction and the message of the Father, the Creator. In the same way, there is a queue of beggars. You will only give this message, but the message of 1 second is powerful. This message, so Brahmins, as we go into our karmatit stage, just a second's drishti, just a second's vibration is what will give the message to souls. We won't need to spend so long speaking to people. They will understand because we're in that more divine stage. So this message then becomes merged in those souls in the form of a sanskar. Souls of all religions will come begging for this. People even say that Christ is now here in the form of a beggar. The founders of religion will also come in front of you in the form of beggars. So what alms will you give them? You will simply give them this message. So Baba is suggesting that there are many religions in the world, and many souls who are going to establish religions or play prominent roles in religions, they might not listen to knowledge, but they will come to the Brahmins to experience something and gain something. So Baba spoke to us about that on Thursday in the bold message as well, that as you develop your stage further, then other souls can receive Baba's attainments through you. Now, I'm just going, that was the one I was looking for. I'm just going to type it in here, see if I can find it. Otherwise, you'll just have to get my paraphrasing of it. No, unfortunately, I don't think I'm able to find it. I'll try one more thing. No. So the one I was looking for, so this is just paraphrasing. At another time when I find it, I'll show it to you. That Baba was saying that the reason why Jesus was put on the cross was actually because he taught purity. So this was the suggestion that Baba was making in that extract. And that's something that hasn't been kept in Bhakti. The story behind Jesus being put in the cross is more about power rather than purity. But in this extract, Baba speaks about that they put Christ on the cross because he was teaching purity. And I believe even now it's not permissible for Jewish couples to observe celibacy. I don't think you can. It's very much considered against that religion. There's an expectation to marry and have children. And particularly once you're married, I don't think you can then become celibate. And so Christ coming and teaching purity, the way in which Baba comes and teaches as well, even to householders. And certainly there's some speculation, it became popularized through Dan Brown's books, that was Jesus married to Mary Magdalena. And I suppose it's possible based on what Baba's telling us, that Christ is a separate soul, Jesus is a separate soul. And usually, like after the bar mitzvah, actually, it would be quite common for children, teenagers to be married. And then Christ is really shown as teaching from about the age of about 24, 25. So maybe Christ came later, after Jesus had been married. It's possible. I don't know for sure. But it seems as if, just as Shiv Baba did, Christ came and asked for universal celibacy. And that was not liked amongst the Jewish community. Maybe among the Roman Empire, it was more a case of subversion and power. But it seems like there is that role of purity. So Baba draws this parallel between the opposition that Brahma Baba was facing and the death threats that he went through, and other daddies also went through a lot, and what Jesus went through and the early Christians went through at that time. But it seems to have been written out of their history that there's a connection with celibacy there. So I'll stop there. And if anyone would like to come in with any questions or points, please feel free to do so.
Brother Shilan, I just wanted to ask,
Go ahead,
at
Sister
what
G.
point did the Christ soul come into Jesus?
I don't think we know for sure. What we know from the Bible is that there's some account of Jesus being with his father Joseph when he's 13 years old. And he's introduced Joseph the carpenter, and this is the carpenter's son. And then the next account seemed to be of the rabbi. And by that time, the rabbi, Jesus, is about 24, 25. So somewhere between those ages, the Christ soul has come, because Jesus was not the teacher. Christ was the teacher. So my guess is around about the age of 24.
But then, when Jesus was crucified on the cross, the Christ soul was there too.
What Baba is saying to us is that that's the soul of Christ would have left and gone into his next birth just before then. So my interpretation based on that, of that very famous line where Jesus looks up and says, Father, where have you gone? Why hast thou forsaken me? And that is interpreted as Christ calling up to God. But based on what Baba's saying, my interpretation is it's actually the soul of Jesus calling to the soul of Christ, that where have you gone? Because he would have become accustomed to this other soul being in him and having been there for the best part of a decade. And then, as Baba's explaining, that the soul of Christ could not have been there at the time of crucifixion, because the soul would have then experienced sorrow, and a new soul from the soul world has no karmic accounts, so can't experience any sorrow. So at the time of the crucifixion, it's only the soul of Jesus that's in the body. And therefore, it's really that soul that is demonstrating that tolerance and that love.
So these elevated souls, like Buddha and Christ, did they ever meet Shiv Baba?
Yes. So it does come up in the Murli that when the daddies were in Karachi, some of them had seen in trance these religious fathers coming and meeting Baba. So this narrative that you were just hearing about the beggar form, Baba says that the thing about it is that these religious fathers, they will be in ordinary forms now. So the soul of Christ might be an everyday Christian. So you would not be able to identify that this is the soul of Christ. Just as when people look at all of the Brahmins, we don't look like anything special. And no one could tell that this is a deity soul, that this is an angelic soul. We are ordinary. So this is what Baba calls the beggar form. But these religious fathers, they might have already come. Last year, I was listening to a little bit of something that Sister Jayanti was sharing. And you might remember that we've been repeating these Murlis of the 1980s on the Sundays these last couple of years. And as we were going through 1983, 84, it was the opening of the hall Om Shanti Bhavan in Panda Bhavan. And that was the first conference hall that we had in Madhuban. And people, brothers and sisters, were bringing different VIPs to meet Baba. And at that time, there were some senior priests that had gone and met Baba, other senior officials. And so Sister Jayanti does have a feeling that one of those that had come in the Hall of Time dialogue, so where they've got some different interfaith people who've come, and they've come for important conferences. Back in the day, they would even have personal meetings with Baba and sit with Baba for quite some time, even though they were not Brahmins. So her feeling is that probably these souls have come in those groups and met Baba. But then we were also hearing from Baba just now that maybe also these souls will be in contact with different Brahmins. And as the Brahmins elevate their stage and accumulate, then these souls of different religions. So, for example, you may know some Christian souls. Now, they could be deity souls, and at their own time, they will become deities, they will become Brahmin, they will study the Murli. Or they might be older Christian souls. They might be some of the early Christians. So when I meet such souls who are Christians, or I've got friends who are Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, I keep the awareness that they might be an older, like I'm an older soul within this religion. So and similarly, they might be an older soul of their religion. And so I remember Shiv Baba and I look at their soul in the forehead and I just think that let them have Shiv Baba's vibration for whatever role they've got to play within their religion in the next cycle. Thank you, Sister, for the questions. Sister Marie, I can see you on screen. Did you want to come in? Okay. Anyone else like to come in and ask anything or say anything?
At one point, I think you said that Shiv Baba sent these souls in their time, when their time was ready. Am I saying the correct thing?
Yes, that was there in that extract from the Murli, yes. So it's like they're remembered as messenger souls. Now, of course, actually, everything happens according to time, really. So the souls will come. If you think like the soul of Jesus has to also be at that right moment, it's the right point in the cycle. Like religions are also sequential, aren't they? So until Abraham has come and Moses has come, like Christ has his role at his time in a sense. So in a tree, everything is sequential. So in that sense, it's not like Shiv Baba sending everyone, but it's more like the tree just continues to go from being incorporeal to being planted down here sequentially.
Because I was a little bit confused about whether the elevated souls did meet Shiv Baba.
Well, all souls meet Shiv Baba in the soul world anyway. And then in this world, as I mentioned, the religious fathers, they will meet Shiv Baba in the body, and probably they already have done.
Thank you so much.
Sister Juliet, I can see you on the screen. Did you want to come in?
Shanti, I just had two observations. The first was how interesting that the other religions have taken things from us and made it part of their own. So the idea of virgin birth and so on. I thought that was new information to me in terms of the birth of Jesus. And the other thing has gone from my mind, no doubt it will come. Oh, yes. I was told at one point that all of the religious founders had been to Madhaban. I think it was based on one of Daddy Janki's class, but that they didn't know who they were. They were just, but they didn't know who they were originally or who they are, that they are the religious founders. And I found that very interesting. A third point was the Jesus and the Christ soul, that Jesus, I also always had the thought that it was Jesus was crying out to Christ on the cross because he had become familiar with having the Christ soul within his physical body. And he obviously could feel that he was alone. And that always made sense to me, even before hearing Baba's knowledge. And so, like Brahma Baba, when Shiv Baba or Bab Dada is in that form, Brahma Baba is familiar with Shiv Baba, knows that he's there and that companionship is there. So I was thinking that must have been the case for the Jesus soul as well, that he was confident that and familiar with the Christ soul as his companion as well. And the whole confusion when I listen, you know, being in Jamaica, and it's a very Christian society, and hearing the different explanations of the relationships, you know, that Jesus is God, Christ. I don't even know that there are many that I've spoken to who see the separation of Christ and Jesus, and sometimes the separation of Christ and Jesus and God. It's all merged into one, and a lot of confusion, it seems to me. I found today very enlightening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sister. Yeah, I just on that last point, you see, the religion is politics, religion is power, and the church was brutal in its stifling of other thought. So the early Christians, for the first 400-500 years, there were a lot of discussions about these concepts. But then eventually it was just decided by the church that we're not going to separate the two. It's just one. And then the other one that was very, very controversial, and I think it's the difference between the Orthodox Church and the European churches, is on the Trinity and having Jesus as part of the Trinity. I don't think he is part of the Trinity in the Orthodox Church. I think that's the difference. So you can see as Bhakti goes on that there's so many, you know, we had the question earlier about Srimad, and so you just end up with so many opinions. And the average day-to-day Christian is not going to, they're not scholars. They're just going to accept whatever's there and just believe it and go along with it. And we've been taught not to question. You know, questioning, thinking, reason, these are new things. We haven't been doing that for centuries. We just believe something and do it. And then the point about the relationship between Jesus and Christ, I think, is worth really thinking about, that there is a uniqueness between this connection of the religious father and the religious mother. So, and we hear it in the Murlis a lot, actually. You know, Shiv Baba, Brahma's the mother, this narrative comes up so frequently. And I just think none of us can fully empathize the way Brahma Baba would be able to empathize with Jesus, with Siddhartha and Buddha, Muhammad and the Prophet, Nanak and the Guru, and so on. I just think that is a completely unique thing. We can remember Shiv Baba, we can experience, like Baba said the other day, that you're sort of in a family unit with Shiv Baba, your grandfather, Mama and Baba, the world mother and father, your parents, and you're the child. But in that sense, you know, we're never equal in the same way. Whereas a mother and father, they are on the same level as each other. And that is a unique experience. And the main difference between the main thing that stops us becoming bhakti is that our father and mother don't take rebirth. This is the key difference. So because Christ and Jesus' souls took rebirth. They then forget, they have to relearn, they become influent, and so on. And in that, you don't have that consistent authority. You lose that consistent authority. Happens in all the religions. The huge advantage we have is that Shiv Baba doesn't take rebirth anyway. And then even Brahma, this is a unique, no religious father, no deity, no one else is able to do this, to suspend himself outside of the cycle of rebirth. Now for 53 years, this is a unique power of the father of humanity. And so what it's enabling us to do, like Baba said this morning, that even if someone comes late as a Brahmin, they will still have the live experience of Babdada. They will sit in Baba's remembrance, sit in Baba's room, and it's not that they're remembering someone who's gone in the past, but it's a present energy that Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba can provide. And then we've got the Murli recordings, we've got the Murli videos, we've got transcripts. And this is what separates us from becoming Bhakti. And because the religious fathers take rebirth, they lose that clarity over time. So then there's interpretations of interpretations of interpretations, and you end up, as Baba said, you end up actually Antichrist. I mean, we look at the moment, former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, he's a very good scholar, actually. He's based at Cambridge University. He's very interesting, and he was part of that. I think because of him, that delegation to Ukraine got publicity because he's well known. And I was listening to him. He's actually a scholar of the Eastern Church. So although he is Church of England, he is actually a scholar of the Eastern Church as well. And he's written books on this. And I heard him on the radio last week, and he was so upset with the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church. And, you know, they try and be diplomatic, they try and be measured. But eventually, at the end of that interview, he just said that that leader has to understand that half of his flock are killing the other half of his flock. And one day he is going to have to go in front of Jesus Christ and account for himself. And it was this, you know, this Antichrist, that how can you support war and then call yourself a Christian? How do you do this? And we've had popes declaring war, haven't we, over the centuries and things. So when you look at this, you can see how both of these souls, Jesus and Christ, they themselves might have moved away from their original stage. But they would also be very worried about their religion because it's so mixed. And the big advantage we've got is that daddies will come and go, brothers will come and go, Brahmins will come and go, centers will come and go. Shiv Baba, Brahma Baba, they're here. They're going nowhere. And so we have that centrality, anchor is not gone. Whereas in the other religions, it's just part of the drama. It has to happen. Thanks for that, sister. And Sister Maria, did you want to come in?
Yes, just briefly about the frequent questions of newly born DKs, ex-Catholics, when they say, was Jesus, since there are two souls, was Jesus and Christ, did Jesus, maybe he was an ex-Brahmin, why did he have the suffering of the cross? And of course, the time when he says, Father, why have you abandoned me? He was actually telling Christ, why have you you have left me, because he was only the one supposed to suffer on the cross.
Yes, exactly.
There was discussion. Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So
exactly.
the
But the soul of Jesus is not a Brahmin soul. These are souls of another religion, and they are parents of another religion. But it seems to be, from what Baba is suggesting, that the soul of Jesus might be in his second birth or third birth even. It doesn't seem like that soul was in its first birth, because otherwise there isn't a buildup of karmic accounts. So it looks like that soul of Jesus might have been in the Jewish religion for 2-3 births or something like that. And like none of the religions, like, Baba talks to us about how these daddies have gone into an advanced party, and there's like a transition from this Brahmin religion into a deity religion. I think this is how it works in the sequence of religions. So you you have early Christian souls. They're actually members of the Christian religion, but they come down before the founder. They're like an advanced party for the founder. And they come down, and the Christian religion hasn't been established yet, so they can't be Christians. But they come down and become part of the religion. Like, for example, like say with Moses was in Egypt, and maybe some of those who were part of that Jewish religion, they might have been following some of the practices of the Egyptian empire or something like that. But then there were some of the early Christians who were also Romans as well. So again, they were part of that Roman religion, but could be a Christian soul. But they've come down like an advanced party for that religious father. So this soul of Jesus, I think, has been in there for a little longer, 2 or 3 births. In this religion, we know that Baba tells us that the soul of Brahma has taken a full 84 births. So it's a big account. It's different. This religion is not, the Brahmins are not coming from the soul world. The Brahmins are down here. So Baba says that it's a different process of purification. Whereas in this case, it was different. So there's some karmic account maybe of impurity. But I look at this now, and when I think of the soul of Jesus, I think of one principle that Baba explains to us, which is short-term defeat and long-term gain. And sometimes when you are truthful, Baba says, you might lose in the short term, because this is the night of the cycle. It's not a time for truth. And you might have experiences where it seems like you lose. But in the long run, who is remembered? Like the people who put Jesus on the cross, where are they? Who are they? But Jesus, that symbol is everywhere. Probably the most famous symbol in the world is the cross. And so in the long run, that soul's praise, that soul's worship, it's equal to Christ, isn't it? It's just as powerful as Christ. The Christians will empathize just as much with Jesus as they would with Christ. And so in the long run, it was the basis of that soul's worship, because that soul had to become an example of tolerance. That soul had to become an example of forgiveness in extreme circumstances. Recently, we had a member of parliament murdered here in the UK, and that was a Christian family as well. And the relatives, it was one of these Islamic terrorists who, they have mental illnesses, I think, and they have all sorts of thoughts in their head that they're doing something good for their religion. So they have all this nonsense and hate. And he was like researching many different MPs, ready to target many different people. But what did the family say immediately? They came out and said, we forgive this soul. We don't want any retaliation. We don't want any vengeance. And so these souls who are from the Christian religion, 2,000 years after Jesus forgave, they are taking power from those sanskars of forgiveness, and they are able to do that. So the soul of Jesus had to play this role in extreme circumstances. If you think of the history of so many peoples around the world, this experience of Jesus has given strength. You know, one thinks of the black churches in America and the Caribbean. They took a lot of strength from it was equivalent, really. Slavery was like an equivalent of being crucified. And you find many Christians who have this sort of equivalent experience later on in the centuries. They took a lot of strength from Jesus's experience. So, you know, short term, yes, there was suffering, but long term, there's a great deal of benefit in this. So sometimes that happens.
Thank you.
And then, as I mentioned, I couldn't find the extract, but there's something about purity. You see, if you begin teaching purity, people don't like it. And then Baba's comment about the Antichrist is very powerful. I mean, any Catholics hearing that will be very delighted, because they've been saying this for centuries, that actually this should be. And there's a lot of debate even now about should priests be allowed to marry and so on. And Baba is so absolute about purity. He's so absolute about it. And my sense from hearing the Murlis hundreds and hundreds of times is that Shiv Baba appreciates the Christ soul more than any other religious father for this reason, that he teaches purity. So the Christ soul has captured the essence of Shiv Baba, and he has this courage to teach this in a culture that doesn't want it. And even now, after thousands of years, that culture of celibacy is there. Monks and nuns are important. They're important, as Baba was saying in that extract, that the importance is reduced, it's diminished. But we used to sponsor monks and nuns just to pray for us, didn't we? We used to have these sort of monasteries, especially because we used to value their purity. We used to value their prayer. So we have to understand the Buddha as well. Buddhist monks, they would remain celibate as well. So they've captured something of Shiv Baba's teaching there, and Baba would appreciate that a great deal. And then again, I couldn't see it in the extracts, but there is this connection that Baba brings out between Christ and Krishna. So you'll hear in the Murlis, Baba talk about how these are the two most powerful clans out of all of the clans. And there's a connection between the two. And that connection is also mentioned in Bhakti. Some of you might have heard of the Hare Krishna movement. They're quite big also in different countries. They have different books that their guru published and pictures that their guru published where he talks about the similarity. And when you're from a polytheistic tradition like Hinduism, it's not a big leap to consider Christ to be an incarnation of God. It's not a big, like, you believe in many gods anyway. So for the Hindus, they will much more readily think like, oh, probably Christ is an incarnation of Vishnu. That's how they will think. For the monotheistic traditions, it's not really acceptable to think that way. But Baba is talking about there are connections. These are separate souls. The name is similar, but also that there is a connection between these two souls. So at the end of the Iron Age, a confluence age, the Christian religion is dominating the world. And it's transitioning into the time of Krishna. And so you've got the power of these two clans coming together. So Baba said to us this morning in the Murli that he will create the new world through you mothers, through you sisters, but he doesn't do destruction through you. And Baba tells us, we're seeing it being enacted at the moment, how the Christian brothers fight. So he says it's in the drama that the Christian brothers will fight amongst each other. And regrettably, when Europe fights with each other, it becomes a world war. That's just, history tells us that. So it's very, very dangerous, very, very precarious. The world has changed these last 2 months. We had 30 years of disarmament. That's now gone. We are going to see now every country in the world building armaments. We're going to see proliferation of nuclear weapons. Germany, for example, had this policy for so many decades of appeasement and peace and codependency of trade. They were spending nothing on armaments, really, like 0.5% of GDP. Immediately now, they've committed $100 billion to armaments and building up their defenses. The world has changed in these last 8 weeks. We are now going to move much more to arming, and then Baba says, once you have weapons, you use them. The history tells us that. You don't just build weapons and then keep them. No, every single weapon that's been made in history, it's used. And so, unfortunately, so the Christian clan has this connection with destruction. The Krishna clan has the connection with creation and sustenance. So Baba says these two clans are significant at confluence age, and we will see this enact out. The other thing is 3 wise kings, or the 3, sometimes they're depicted as holy men, things like that. At the time of Christ's birth, as Baba's just said to us, that sort of didn't happen. But in the Murlis, Baba talks to us about 3 authorities: the authority of politics, the authority of religion, and the authority of science. That the whole world is dominated by these 3 authorities. And those 3 kings coming from the east, Baba explains that when Christ comes, politics, religion, and science, they get attracted by the Christian religion. So if you look at science, for example, it's mainly emerged from the early Christians, and then it was built upon later on. But the early Christians like Newton and others, they were the ones who started this off. So they've got political power because of colonialism. Their religion is the largest as well, because through colonialism, they converted so many people. So at this time, at the end of the Iron Age, those 3 wise kings, politics, religion, and science, they've gone from the east to the west to Christ. But now the soul of Krishna has become purified again. He's ready as Adam, as the angel. And so Baba says that these 3 powers are going to come east again. So the 3 wise kings, politics, religion, and science, they're coming back to India, back east again, because the soul of Krishna will be born back there. And the final thing to mention is the connection between these religious fathers and holy lands. There seem to be 2 areas of the world where religions or the major faiths are established. One is India, and in the picture of the tree of religions, you will see that you've got Shiv Baba, of course, the seed. He comes into India and he establishes the trunk, the deity religion. And then on the right side, the branches, these are the religions established in India, like Buddhism, the sannyasi religion, the Sikh religion, and then there are other smaller religions too. But India is a holy land for religious establishment. And then the other place is the Middle East, where you've got Judaism, Christianity, and you've got Islam. And of course, they all seem to culminate at Jerusalem, don't they? So you've got particular places even where it's particularly holy. But there seems to be this significance where these religious fathers have come and incarnated. Abraham was in what is modern day Afghanistan. But then you've got Christ, Muhammad. They were incarnating in the Middle East, and it's made the Middle East Holy Land. So there is a connection between these souls incarnating in this karmatit stage, and then the impact it has on the land as well. It leaves a vibration on the land. And so then people are attracted to go there. Shiv Baba comes into India, the deities will be born into India, and then so many other religious souls are born there. So India is a holy land. The Middle East is a holy land. And then other places are as well, but not quite on this level. Let me stop there. So we've had, I hope you find it was an intriguing discussion. And it's Easter weekend, of course. And for us Brahmins, we're very fortunate to know the three aspects of time. We know the three aspects of time of ourselves. We know it of Shiv Baba's role. And we also know it of the religious fathers. So when we see these festivals, we're seeing them in a very different way than we would have done in previous centuries. So thank you for joining. Thanks to those of you that were here live. Always great to see you all. And also warm greetings to those of you watching on the video later. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Happy
Thank you.
Easter.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Shanti,
Om
brother.
Shanti.
Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Om
Bye-bye.
Shanti.
Om Shanti. Bye-bye.
Well done.
Bye.
Thanks for being there, bro. Om Shanti.